took the Canon EOS M out the other day to a music festival, shot some Magic Lantern RAW video in 2K resolution, and then in post I upscaled it all to 5K resolution. Does it look amazing? Heck yeah. Alright, so first things first, here is my camera. This is the Canon EOS M, all rigged up into this small Z-cam cage-like thing. And it was comfortable, you know, shooting out in the music festival. I was handling it like this, and I had big lenses, small lenses, and I could just carry it around nice and comfortably. The power bank at the back, you know, that allows me to balance the camera out, and instead of having, you know, forward weight from the lens, I could just have a nice, well-balanced camera in my hands, and it feels great. So there you go. I've made a video about the whole setup, and I'll leave those in the description link below. Now, I did my research before going to this festival, and I knew that there were going to be bands playing, you know, people singing on stage, dancing. So I had to make sure that I got the right lenses with me. So the lenses that I chose to shoot with was the Canon 10 to 18mm, the Canon 55 to 250 STM lens, and the Canon 17 to 55 f2.8 lens. Now, I have to say I was really pleased with the results from all these three lenses. But surprisingly, I shot mainly with the Canon 55 to 250mm. This was my main lens, and I was absolutely surprised and blown away with the footage that I got from this zoom lens. This lens is rated at 4 stops of stabilization, and at the back here you can see that I've modded it from an EFS mount to EF mount. And what that means is I can attach this to my EF speed boosters, and I'm able to acquire a wider field of view and a fast aperture. So f4 becomes around f2.8 equivalent, and that means I get more light into the sensor and a more shallow depth of field. So when I'm trying to get musicians on stage or people playing guitar, I can isolate that subject. I can get, you know, that nice depth of field with this camera in RAW video. Now, I had the stabilization on the whole time, and I switched it to manual focus. And, you know, when I'm zooming out, I quad focus, and I could zoom in, zoom out, and it wasn't perfectly parfocal, meaning that, you know, when you focus on your subject and zoom, you know, if it retains focus. And the thing was, it wasn't doing that. So I had to be quite careful and zoom in and out just slightly, acquire focus, and that sort of stuff. But the Canon 55 to 250 was my main go-to lens on that day, and the majority of footage that you were seeing was done with this lens. Pretty much 90% of the footage was done with the 55 to 250 STM lens. So here's what the lens looks like on my Canon EOS M extended out, and you can see that for the focus I've put a small rig, focus ring, focus gear, just to help me with that, you know, better grip when I'm trying to acquire focus. Now, the other lenses that I used on the day was the Canon 10 to 18mm and the Canon 17 to 55. I have to say the 17 to 55 barely had any use whatsoever. I mean, it's a fantastic lens. It's been modded to EF mount, so you can put on speed boosters and get, you know, f2 aperture, but I barely used it, and I think I only got 1 or 2 shots on that day. So 55 to 250 is a highly recommended lens for the Canon EOS M and these high resolution crop modes. Now, as for the settings, I wanted that sort of TV broadcast-like look, so I chose to shoot 30 frames per second on the Canon EOS M. And you're probably thinking, 30 frames per second, RAW video, are you kidding me? Don't you get dropped frames and stuff like that? If you're in the 1080 mode, then definitely expect dropped frames, but I shoot 2K resolution with 30 FPS in the 2.5K FRTP mode. And 30 frames per second works absolutely perfectly with no dropped frames at all. Now, to configure these settings, what you need to do is go into presets and select the 2.5K FRTP mode. Once you've done that, you want to go down to FPS override. So enable that, and then you can see that you can switch the FPS all the way up to 30 frames per second, and then set the FPS override to high FPS. You can also select low light if you need, but there's not much of a difference between the two. So once you've done FPS override, make sure that your resolution is set at whatever aspect ratio you need. So you can shoot 2.5K at around, you know, 15 seconds or so. If you reduce it to 2.4K, you can get around continuous at 2.35 to 1. But I shot with a 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio, and that was set to about a 2K resolution. It's about 2000 by 1080 resolution. If you want to select 16:9, then it's around 1968 by 1080. So every single clip that you're looking at right now from the Canon EOS M is shot with that 2K resolution with a 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio. Now for the editing part, I used MLV App, which is what you use to process the RAW files from the Canon EOS M and Magic Lantern RAW. And what I did was set the clips to Rec 709 just to get that broadcast TV-like look. And then I graded from there. I added a bit of sharpening to around, I think 60 or 70%. And then just, change exposure. And then from there, you can change things like dark strength, clarity, all those sorts of stuff. Now, all these clips that you're looking at are Rec 709 graded, and they have been upscaled from a 2K resolution all the way up to 5K 1.85:1 aspect ratio. Now in order to do this, just go up to the export settings in MLV App and enable upscaling. Now once you've done that, you can pretty much change any resolution that you want according to the aspect ratio that you shot in. Now you're probably thinking, is it true 5K? And the answer is no, it isn't. It's 2K, but when you upscale it, it unpacks more information because you're dealing with raw data. And so when you upscale your footage, you can get away with a bit more detail thanks to the RAW format that this Canon camera can shoot with. Now just for comparison, I did something a bit cheeky. I compared the graded footage from MLV App upscaled to 5K in comparison to Davinci Resolve graded upscale to 4K. So here's a bit of a sample between those two. The clips on the right will be the MLV App and the clips on the left will be Davinci Resolve. Now what I noticed is that Davinci Resolve has more of a filmic look to it. It is a bit soft, and even though I've put more sharpening, MLV App just comes out on top as sharper. It looks great. It has a bit of more of a Rec 709-ish broadcast look. I think a bit less filmic, but if you're doing music videos, live events and stuff like that, I think the broadcast look with MLV App looks fantastic. And if I'm going for something a bit more filmic, a bit like the Blackmagic cameras, then Davinci would be my preference. Now for this shoot, I only brought one bag with me. It's called Built by New York. And this was fantastic, keeping all the stuff that I needed on the shoot, like my screwdrivers and Allen keys by Small Rig. If my cage came loose by accident, I could fix that. And then I also had an Amaran AL M9 lights. It has a 1/4-inch screw down over here, so I can mount it to the top handle, carry it around, record people on stage if I had to. And then these 3 lenses only. It's a light setup. EFS lenses are the way to go, I think, with the Canon EOS M if you're shooting live events, music videos and stuff like that, because the stabilization helps so much, and they can be adapted to speed boosters. And then when you shoot in high crop modes, high resolution, then you're not going to get vignetting and stuff like that. You're going to get crystal clear, sharp looking videos for that broadcast-like look. Now out in the music festival, you had people with all sorts of different cameras, 5D Mark IIIs, Canon R5s. You had this guy on stage with a massive, I think, FS7 Mark II. And then here I am with just a Canon EOS M and these tiny little lenses just doing its thing and capturing amazing footage. When I got back home and started editing them, they were remarkable. So take aboard the settings that I use, give them a test, give them a go and see how you perform. Any questions, let me know in the comments below. Let me know on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll be sure to help out. But if I had to choose some lenses to go with the EOS M and the high resolution crop modes, it would be the Canon 10-18 and the Canon 55-250. If you want something with more depth of field and better in low light stuff, then the Canon 17-55 or the Sigma 17-50 f2.8 mounted onto a speed booster will do just fine. But that's it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, then give a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.